Peace, greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abbott, aka Mr. Just the Facts. Tonight we're gonna have just a little brief discussion about reparations. We're actually prepping for our live stream tomorrow night, where we're gonna be discussing, our first book club, Charles M. Blow's The Devil You Know. Powerful discussion that we're gonna have, family. So as you all come in, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share this video out. Let people know that we're live. That we just doing a little brief touch up on the topic of reparations, man. Because there's a lot of people that don't get it. There is a lot of gatekeepers out here that either don't want us to have it, don't think we're going to get it, and so they're trying to pretend like they're fighting for it, like the Afrocentrics who are in line with the Democrats, or you have folks who in the Pan-Africanist movement who just want to be the face of it, so that when it's successful, they can take the credit for it and try to implement a plan that they feel is desirous to how they constructed their reparations and how it should look. Shout out to everybody that's in the building so far. Peace, brother Lionel, I see you. Shout out to the BTP Mars that's on deck. Sister Riri, Corey, brother Corey. Got my brother Ali Bey in the building. So,
Peace.
Brother Ali, let's go in real brief about this issue of reparations. Dr. Darity, let me hold up Dr. Darity's book. I'm going through it again at my second go around. Dr. Darity and A. Kirsten Mullins' book, From Here to Equality, where they break down reparations A through Z. They, in chapter 12 of this book, they give us the ammunition so that we can respond to the questions that, it's hard to even call them questions, the rebuttals that people try to bring forth, really because they're against reparations in the first place. So, what are some of your experiences so far? Let's touch on this thing. And I mean, just in the form of conversation of what you're hearing.
Yeah, my experience is probably pretty much the same as everybody else's in terms of the type of opposition that, I face when having that kind of discussion. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are not as knowledgeable about what reparations is, how it would work, who the beneficiaries would be, as many of us think that people are. See, I think a lot of times we've gotten so used to preaching to the choir, so to speak, like, from the whole ADOS community, the Foundational Black American community, the Freedmen community, whatever, however you want to, but all of the advocates of reparations, we got so used to talking to each other about it, debating with the Afrocentric advocates of reparations about it, that we kind of think that people really have a good understanding of what it is. And I think we're mistaken, because you're talking about 40 something million, and that's including the Black immigrants, but you're talking about 40 something million, close to 50 million Black people in the United States, that we're assuming the majority of them actually understand what this thing is and what it's about. And it's just not true. I think the majority of Black people have no clue what it's even about. So what we're going to do is you're going to wind up getting unintelligent conversations when we're engaging in these conversations with people about it most of the time, because most people are probably just not knowledgeable in this particular area.
Facts. I was having a conversation with one of my peeps the other day, and we were having this discussion about reparations, and my piece was like, the way the hoods are now. And I'm going to pull up some numbers. I'm going to pull up some data, some statistics. Y'all know how we do here on Be the Power. Again, make sure y'all hit that like button. Make sure y'all share it out. Uh, Reminder again, we are doing our first book club tomorrow night. There's going to be a powerful, powerful bill tomorrow night, or based on this idea that our people from the North need to move back down South. And by doing so, we become political powerhouses. But in this conversation with my peeps, he said something interesting. He was like, if the way he looks at it, if you give money to the neighborhoods that are poor, that they're basically going to become more savage. Like the money is not going to quell the sickness that is crime, but instead it is the money is going to exacerbate it. It's not going to make it better. It's not going to make it go away. But before I pull up some things, do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah. The implication is that black people are inherently evil, or there is a certain type of pathology that's inherent in black people, and that by feeding black people finance feeds into the pathology. That's what it says to me. It's saying that black people are inherently sick people, and that there's really nothing that can be done about it. And if you feed it money, because blacks are monsters. If you feed them money, what it's going to do is going to make them more of the monsters that they actually already are. That's what I get out of that.
Yeah, I
And what
mean,
that amounts to me, is racial profiling.
mm-hmm.
It amounts to racial profiling, the very thing that the white supremacists are guilty of and have been guilty of for decades, centuries here, is the profiling of our people and promoting this idea that our people are inherently these things: subhuman,
Mm-hmm.
second class, subservient, sick, prone to criminality, all of these different things. And that's what I get out of that kind of language, because I know that what's really undergirding his thoughts comes from the ideas of white supremacists.
Yes, and it's unfortunate because a lot of us, we don't know that, right? We don't know the psychological underpinnings of why reparations is needed, and how this what's the best word? How, we were made contagions to wealth. If you put, I was told when I was young. Yeah, I was told when I was young about an experiment that was done. I can't remember exactly who conducted the experiment, but it said that if you took a bunch of mice or rats and you put them in a controlled setting and you put them where their quarters were away, it was in the same settings, but they lived in their separate corners. And you put one food source in the middle of that uh, structure. This is years ago since I heard this. And that one food source is only enough to supply the needs of one of those mice or rats. I can't remember the exact vermin that was used in this said experiment, but
Mhm.
that, and if you put it in the middle, that they would all meet up, and eventually they would realize that it's not enough for all of them to live off of, and eventually they will start to fight each other for those scraps.
Right.
Now, what would happen if the you had if they had rat or mice babies,
Mhm.
they would be trained in this same behavior because right now it's every man for himself. There's only enough for a certain amount of us. There's not enough for all of us. So now we have to meet in the middle and scrap it out. And this will become a generational thing if you maintain the portion size relative to the proportion of how many mice or rats you're using in the experiment. And I was told that, I mean, years ago,
Hmm.
in reference to how we live as a people in the neighborhoods. You know, shout out to everybody that's in the chat. I see y'all, family. Shout out to everybody tuning in. So, brother Josh is on.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts about this idea that if you give money to the people who are the products of poverty, who have become criminals due to the fact that there were no resources and survival is our number one instinct. But if you give reparations money to those people, that it exacerbates the problem, that they become more of a monster than they already are. What are your thoughts on that, brother Josh?
My thoughts on that are, I think there's a, that's that's just a crazy assumption to think that we are a thing or it, something like that. Like first off, that's just like a poor excuse for people don't want to don't want to buy into the idea that we need to get what's owed to us, and that's an excuse for people not to fight for. And then from the people who, let's just say, wouldn't be the beneficiaries of that anyway. And even for those who would, we got to understand that's like a white supremacist
Yeah, you
your
going you
mouth.
going in and
Like
out,
you should,
Josh.
if that's your psyche, you know, that that's really sad, man. That's really sad. Because number one, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a debt that we're owed. That doesn't take away from the fact that, um, you know, yeah, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a debt we're owed, but it is like you're ignorant of the information, the context behind any of the positions that you taking, because you're just maybe going off of anecdotals or something that you may see in media or TV or something like that, but you're not understanding of the whole. You don't have a was it Goodyear blimp view of our situation on the macro level. So you don't understand that what the wealth position of our people is. You're not taking into
Yeah, you going in and out at times, brother Josh.
the policies that were implemented at the behest of the federal government, the state governments, uh, and back even further to slavery. And so, you know, then if you want to compare, because a lot of times people want to compare, it's interesting how people want to compare the position of a people who've been through generations of oppression and still have not been given a equal track or equal starting point to start from, let alone pay the debt we're owed, right? We're still holding all those costs. But then you want to compare us to people who may have got to start and get a fresh start in a new country. They're not coming over here with anchors. You're talking about people. You want to compare us to people who may have been selectively um, allowed to get citizenship and get position over here, like you want to say, well, why aren't y'all Negroes are just dysfunctional? No, like it's going to take a massive effort to undo the damage to undo the damage that was done. And like if you want to even compare to other historically damaged groups or disadvantaged groups, you can still look at where various governments, including our government, has helped these groups out at some point to and they have not been through what we've been through. So it's just terrible, man. Anybody who holds a viewpoint that if you give Black Americans reparations, Native Black Americans reparations, the ones who are descendants of freedmen, that will just run it, they'll just help speed up our demise, or we'll just eat it up or waste it or something like that. You're ignorant of the data. Let me give you one point. Like, there was a study done, it was cited in Dr. Darity's From Here to Equality book. It was also cited in a report he did called What We Get Wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. And it was myths around like how we are purported to do, right? And it was talking about, if you like our levels of savings, right? And pretty much what it says was, once you control for the level of savings and you control for the levels of wealth, excuse me, if you control, once you control for the levels of income, then Black folks actually save more than white folks, you know. But it's people don't see all that, you know. One of the reasons is because we don't have that many people that have the level of income of white Americans, right? So we looking at, like, when you got all of these people that are in a position where they don't make much money and they don't have much wealth, and then you want to compare like their habits to people who have stability in their life, who have they're not in a desperation position, you know, and how they spend money. It's going to be totally different. But once you're able to control to where you comparing apples to apples, and you see, wow, Black folks actually save more money. You know, they actually have a higher rate of savings. See, once you understand the numbers behind it and the data behind it, see, then it gets rid of all speculation, and all the talking you're talking is just hot air.
Exactly. So what I want to do, I want to pull up something real quick. I mean, there's so many of these articles. We've pulled up several over our past year. We're going to do a year in review soon as well, because, you know, we've been going a year strong now, family. Be the power. And I think we're going to do that when our channel, on our original BTP channel on April 14th. So y'all stay tuned to that. We're going to do a year in review, and we're going to break down some of the things that we've done, talked about, some of the relationships that we've built, some of the fallouts that we've had, including the big fallout with what's her face and them. But y'all look out for that as well. So this is what I want to do. I want to share this. I want to share this. Right? It's one thing for us to go off of our own opinion. It's another thing for us to go off of the reliable data and the statistics. Some people are, especially women, no fan of the brother Kevin Samuels, right? But one of the things that I noticed with Kevin's, I don't agree with everything he says, but I'm a low fan. I'm a low fan, right? To an extent, let me just say. One of the things that he does is he backs up what he's saying with numbers. One of his statistics is off, and one day I'm going to do my own breakdown to that. But and one of the things that the women constantly do when they're on his live streams is they keep talking about how they feel or what they feel. Forget what the statistics and the numbers say, right? Because that's what economists and people who crunch numbers went to school for, to eliminate what we feel or what we think about a thing. And a lot of times that's what we do. We believe that our opinions are everything. The Moorish lessons used to teach, well, still teaches that general opinion is no proof of truth. The generalities of men are ignorant. And that goes for all of us, right? When we give our opinion on something and we try to posit it as an established fact over established facts, we do ourselves more of a disservice. And we have these battles every day. So, it is what it is. But I want to pull this up. Breaking poverty, crime, poverty, orphan link. And again, there are articles after article after article after article after article, studies done by economists, psychologists, etc. So it says this story originally appeared in the Philadelphia Tribune. So this looks as if it's this is jointly published by PBS and NPR, and it's WHYY. I'm not sure if that is a broadcast station or what, but in it's getting into why, right? Why is there poverty? In April, the 17-year-old Nicetown resident watched in horror from the passenger seat of his father's car as bullets fired from a passing van exploded through the driver's side window and tore holes in Eric Eberhardt Sr.'s chest, leaving him dead in the 4400 block of Germantown Avenue, right below Roosevelt Expressway. Eberhardt Sr. had dropped off his 2-year-old daughter at a daycare center just a few moments earlier. By itself, this is unimaginable trauma, but there's more. A few weeks later, while he was sitting on the porch in Chester on a warm night, Eberhardt Jr.'s younger brother was hit by a stray bullet that was believed to be intended for someone else. The bullet grazed the 14-year-old's spinal cord before it exited his body. Doctors are uncertain if he will ever walk again unassisted. What is certain, however, is the body of empirical evidence that shows the homicide rate is higher in poorer parts of the city like Nicetown. So, I mean, this is just, these are studies. We got to start looking at, I'm going to put this link in the chat. I'll be wanting people to follow along with what we're building on, so that what we're building on, because I think that it's important. My bad, y'all. I got the wrong thing up. It should say USADOF.org, not .com. I just fixed that. Make sure y'all check out our website, USADOF.org, not .com. Let me make sure I put that in the inbox. I did. I can read through this thing. Let me just go through, right? So it's breaking down. The Philadelphia has the highest poverty rate among U.S. cities with 1 million or more residents. The federal poverty level, remember, Philly is predominantly Black. The federal poverty level for a household with one adult and 2 children is $20,780. This is the federal poverty level. Approximately 400,000 Philadelphians, almost half, 26%, or half of the 1 million that live in poverty, which represents 26% of the city's total population, are living below the poverty level. For perspective, that's more than the number of people living in Cleveland, Tampa, or New Orleans. About half of impoverished Philadelphians, roughly the same number of people who live in Montgomery, Alabama, live in deep poverty, which is approximately $10,000 annually per household. Let's break down rent, right? The unit where I live rents for $800 a month. So $800 a month times 12. Let's just do that real quick. Let's pull that up, because I could try to take a guess off the top of the head, which I usually do. 800 times 12 that's $9,600. I was right in my head. Thank me. Right? So I just want you to think about that. The unit that I live in is $800 a month. So every year, that's $9,600 that is being kicked out in rent alone. you have about 400,000 Philadelphians who live in, I don't know, no, half of those numbers, about 200,000 Philadelphians who live in deep poverty, which is approximately $10,000 annually per household. Expenses in the North, the cost of living in the North in general is way higher than it is in the South. Another reason for us to start thinking about moving back down South. We're going to get into that tomorrow night when we break down the book club, The Devil You Know, right? It says the next closest city to us has a poverty rate about 20%. That's 5 percentage points lower than us, said Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross. Imagine what the reduction in homicides would be if we cut that by 5 percentage points. It contributes because people, when they are mired in a sense of hopelessness, they tend to see no way out of their circumstances. Desperate people do desperate things. I mean, I can keep going with this, but I'm not. Brothers, what do y'all think about this link between crime and poverty? And it's based on what I've read, based on what we've read just here on the Be the Power platform over the years and in our studies. Oh, nobody's on the stream. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can't.
Did y'all hear the question I asked?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I was gonna let Ali go ahead, but I was trying to find them. I'm just logged into a different computer, and I don't know what happened to it.
So just to recap, I was basically reading one in many articles that shows the correlation between poverty and crime, right? And the police commissioner of the time at that time in Philadelphia. Let me see, when was this article published? I believe this guy may still be the police commissioner. September 18th, 2018, said that if we could just reduce poverty by 5% in our city, at the minimum, the homicide rates will start to drop.
Yeah. So what I say to that is, people always look at the symptom. I mean, they look at the end result, and they look at the symptoms, but they don't want to go and look at the root. And I heard this I always like to put things in the form of like a story so you can understand it. But I heard that, I can't remember where I heard this, on some type of self-help program or some type of I just like to learn all kind of lessons, right? So there was one story was talking about New York City and how New York City had a problem with rats. Now, I haven't been in New York in a while, but I imagine they still got the problem. But people, the city did all kind of took all kind of measures to try to fix the rat problem, and they would spray, they would treat the sewers, they would go and blast the sewers, and they would do all kind of stuff to reduce the rat population. And not too long after that, the rats would come right back, right? And even one apartment complex that I remember living at, it was a similar issue. I remember seeing rats. But what they found out was, as long as you have trash and stuff everywhere, just open access to trash, you probably gonna have an issue with rats. So the point is, like, you can't look at the symptom and think that if you address that symptom, then you can address the underlying cause of that. So what they did was they did mass incarceration. They did increase police surveillance of the neighborhoods. They did all of these things, and that's supposed to let us believe that they're trying to do something to help the problem. When really the problem is, look at the damages that were done to us. Look at the depravities that we had to endure. Look at the conditions that drove us to those urban centers in the first place. Look at the conditions that we had to live through when we were there. And then you hit us with things like um, the war on drugs, chemical warfare, be it crack cocaine, deindustrialization. You hit us with all this kind of stuff. Then you hit us with mass incarceration. I mean, these things cause. If you want to try to figure out, and then I mean, it's so multi-layered that if you don't deal with the cause of the problem, um, you're never gonna fix. You're never gonna get to a solution. And it's gotten so deep now because like anytime when you have a problem that you allow to compound, things that may have been like symptoms that you can fix, wouldn't be too drastic to fix, they become like in themselves like new underlying problems. Like they become deep rooted problems. Like, the issue of like you say, murder and gang violence and things like that. Well, I mean, if you look at when you put so many people in jail, who are going to be the people that are the fathers? Who are going to be the people that were in these streets that had some semblance of order? Who are elders? Like who are these families are tore up? Like, so now that's a problem on its own. That's a problem on its own, and that's a generation. Now that instead of being like a one generation, that's a multi-generational problem in itself. So man, like that is, and when we try to figure out solutions for that, I don't see another solution that you can do, that you can even start to think that you're going to make some type of progress unless you implement some type of large program where you're eradicating the poverty of these people, and you are having funds allocated to fixing some of these other deep-rooted issues. But it has to start with reparations. It has to start with trillions of dollars being administered and paid directly to people that are a part of this group. That's our group, Descendants of Freedmen. That's what it has to start with. That's what it has to start with. That's it's obviously these are like I said, deep-rooted, multi-generational issues. But hey, look, why do I need to jack somebody when I already got mine? You know what I mean? If I'm not hungry, I'm really not gonna be trying to put a whole lot more food in my stomach. So yeah, the mentality is not gonna necessarily change, but the necessity will change.
Yes, indeed, brother Ali. You wanted to speak to any of that?
Oh, you caught me. Yeah, you caught me. I'm trying to listen, but I'm closing up this place. So just so that the family know, we are moving into a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
And trying to prepare for the opening of it in a few days. So it was just coming out of there, locking up and stuff just now. So I was listening, but not listening. My bad.
No, it's all good, bro. It's all good, man. We want to give a shout out to our sister Riri, who is also one of the BTP mods. She's opening up her restaurant, the Lobster Queen, out in Teaneck, New Jersey. Am I correct, Ali?
That's right. Yeah.
If you are in the New Jersey area, if you frequent New Jersey from the New York area or surrounding areas, go check out our sister Riri. I'm gonna start plugging her restaurant when we do more live streams. We'll pull up the flyers for those people that are in the area, so we can start driving business to our sister, because she's being productive. Like we always say on this platform, we are the kings and queens of making a way out of no way. Ain't nothing gonna stop us. Ain't nothing going to stop us. We gonna make something happen. That's a fact.
That's right.
And we're not saying just because we are owed reparations that we shouldn't become productive and industrious. We're not saying that at all. If you have the means to open up business, open it up. We speak to the issue of why we don't have enough businesses in the first place. Right? I'm gonna get into some of that in a little while. So we definitely want to give a shout out to our sister Riri and congratulations and wish her and our family and our brother Ali much success, and make sure I'm vegan, so I can't,
Yeah,
partake
yes.
of the lobster flesh,
Hey,
but I'm
I,
going
I,
to still promote
I'm
it.
trying to push. I'm trying to push her to do a vegan burger, man.
Okay.
Just for those who are vegan. At least we can have a burger.
Hey, look, they
You
got
know?
vegan seafood recipes, man. They
Yeah.
have some vegan seafood recipes that are, if you taste it, you like, yo, is this shrimp? Like, nah, that ain't
Wow. That's crazy.
that's not shrimp. So yeah,
Yeah.
man. So we're giving a shout out to our sister. So um let me see. Let's get into some more. Let's get into some more details about reparations, right? There was a city. I mean, there is a city in Stockton, California, and they did this UBI. For those who are not familiar with the term UBI, it means Universal Basic Income, and they did this experiment where they gave residents of the city, I think it was $600 extra, $500 extra each a month, no strings attached. Just recently, we touched on that on, I believe it was our last program under Andrew Yang. I forget exactly which city that was in where they did the UBI.
Didn't they have something like that in Minneapolis as well?
I'm not sure. I know we touched on it on the last program. I know
Yeah.
they may have touched on it on that Sky News piece that our brother Marlon Watson out of Chicago was on. Shout out to our brother Marlon from Chicago. But in this experiment, startling, I don't want to say it was startling, but it showed us what reparations can do. If you take a poor people, let's take the poorest people in America, which has always been us, and give them what they're owed. This is, forget handouts. For those that say, oh, we're just trying to get a handout, what they're doing in Stockton is a handout. What they're doing in other cities where they're experimenting with UBI, Universal Basic Income, that's handouts. What we're asking for, what was owed, what was promised to our ancestors that was never given to them. And because it was never given to them, their children were born into poverty. Their children's children, children's children's children, all the way down to us, born into poverty. The majority of us. We're not talking about the outliers that made it out. Some people feel because they got a little bit of money that, oh, I did it. It should be easy for everybody else to do it because I did it. Forgetting the very struggles that we came through in the first place, because 9 times out of 10, most other groups don't have to do what we had to do. You don't hear success stories from an Indian American or Asian American or a Native American, right? When I say Indian American, I mean the Hindus, etc., the people from India, Kamala Harris types. Their success story is, we came to America, we plugged into all of America's programs, and now we're worth 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. Black Americans are still worth, the middle black family, $1,700. How is that? We had to go through all of this stuff. We had to sell drugs, shoot, get shot, do jail time, come home, and then finally make it. Nobody else had to go through that over here except us. You see? So this is, let me see. Because I want to get into this. I want to get into this. All right, let's start here. In Stockton, participants were given prepaid debit cards. 40% of the payouts were withdrawn as cash and couldn't be tracked. But of the spending that could be tracked, most went towards food and monthly bills. You know, they have this misconception that if black people get reparations, we're going to go blow it on Air Jordans, gold chains, rim, because that's what black people spend their money on. And it's so funny to me that if you look in any, right, if you look in any black neighborhood, how many cars actually have rims? How many black people are walking around with trunk, how we used to say back in the days, trunk gold jewelry on, big dookie rings and stuff, right? How many of them? So
Right.
what winds up happening is we take on the paternalism of white supremacy. We're not realizing that we're repeating white supremacy. It's become so embedded in us that we don't even realize that we are quote unquote black white supremacists. Now we want to tell people what to do with their money or what we think they'll do with it. And y'all always hear me read this quote from out this book called The Bloody Shirt. It's in my living room, where when it was time to pay the newly freed slaves, some of the slave owners were saying, oh, we can't give the Negroes money, the niggers money. They ain't going to do nothing but go and blow it on drinking alcohol. These people just came out of slavery. All of a sudden, they're going to go blow the money on alcohol. This line of thinking and pseudo reasoning dates back to the former quote unquote slave masters of the South. And we've been carrying on that sentiment and that thinking up till present day. So let me get through a little bit more of this, and y'all remark on it if y'all want, right? So it says, ultimately, any discussion of basic income circles back to cost. It's expensive, which is why these city initiatives that we see popping up, posing as reparations, are not reparations at all. Like in Evanston, that's basically a housing voucher program for people who can actually afford to buy homes in Evanston, where you have some of the highest home cost rate in that state, if I'm not mistaken, if I read that right. So it says USC macroeconomist Diego DeRue says making universal basic income truly universal would mean tax rates go up, potentially by a lot. But he acknowledges the real cost is a guessing game. Again, if this is being done at the state level, then he is absolutely correct. If this is being done at the federal level, then he is absolutely wrong, because the United States of America prints its own money. They just came up with $5 trillion in a year. Not one penny of taxes was levied onto the people and anything. Gas is up because there's a gas shortage. That's it. When there was no shortage, gas prices dropped to some of the lowest numbers we had seen in years. $1.80 something down here in Georgia. So it says UBI programs have become very popular in the past few years, but we realize that there is very little evidence about the consequences if you were to run that at a large scale and in the long run. To me, this is a shot at federal reparations for our people, and it could also just be a critique to Andrew Yang's universal basic income that he wants to give out from the federal government. It continues. Back in Stockton, Zona Everett says she wishes the money was still coming each month, but she's grateful for the escape it afforded her. I feel so free. I feel like I can breathe. I may not have everything, but she says she has peace, right? So, you know, this is just some of what this program had done for the people there. This extra just $500 a month. They owe us at the minimum $1,600 a month over the next 10 years. At least when it comes to family income. We got to get into that one day too, Josh, breaking that whole family income to individual income down as well. That has been a source of contention with some people or who try to challenge me and on Twitter. I know me and Logic have been getting some of that challenge. I think I don't know if Logic was on that Twitter thread, but I know Sister Cynthia came on and was basically schooling this one guy, but it is still a point of contention. I think we need to do a thorough breakdown on that. I see you got something pulled up.
Yeah. I just wanna get into what is and what is not reparations. Because to understand reparations, you have to understand what is not reparations, because just like we heard on, I don't know if y'all heard that Bill Maher interview. Well, it wasn't an interview. It was a segment on Bill Maher's show when he had Charlemagne and some other dude, I think from the New York Times or
Yeah.
one of them, yeah, one of them newspapers. And basically they said, well, we can do many things and call it reparations. Like he let it slip. And it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's exactly the scam that's being run. See, they'll do a lot of things and they'll make it seem like it's something that's going to be a solution, the solution that we need. So the problem with that is that, like, for example, if you tear your ACL, right? And then I tell you, well, we can do surgery. And you're like, cool. And then you get out of surgery and you notice your knee is still messed up. It ain't too much different than what it was when in there. And the surgery they were talking about was, they were gonna get your ingrown toenail out. You know what I mean? But that's not what we're talking about, because that's not going to be fixing my knee so I can walk again, right? And that's the same thing if you let everybody miscategorize reparations. So let me for example, Evanston should not be called reparations. It should be called some type of housing voucher. Yeah, it should be called some type of housing voucher or some type of program, like the housing program. But you can't call it reparations. So let me just read this article. I'm not gonna read the whole article. I'm just read about a few sentences from the article. This is an article from the Washington Post. It's about the Evanston, Illinois deal, and it's by Dr. Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen. All right. So it says the cause of justice demands proprietariness. Yeah, there we go. Man, Dr. Darity, these words, boy, you are cold with these words. So let me start over. The cause of justice demands proprietariness about the meaning of reparations, and we object to these kinds of piecemeal and misleading labels. True reparations can only come from a full-scale program of acknowledgement, redress, and closure for a grievous injustice. Where African Americans are concerned, the grievous injustices that make the case for reparations include slavery, legal segregation, Jim Crow, and ongoing discrimination and stigmatization. What would get us there? We believe that 4 features are essential to a true Black reparations plan. And we're talking about reparations for the descendants of freedom, right? So it says, and y'all pay attention to this. And if you don't have this article, I'm gonna put it in the chat. And the key that I want you to take away is a reparations program. It should have these 4 elements. Number 1, it says, first, the plan must carefully delineate eligibility. The 2 conditions are critical. Eligible recipients must have at least one ancestor who was enslaved in the United States. These are the individuals who bear the burden of the cumulative intergenerational effects of all 3 periods of racial atrocities. Recipients also must show that they self-identified as Black, Negro, or an equivalent designation on an official document for at least 12 years before a reparations program was set in motion, right? Key. So number 1, who you, right? You gotta qualify. Number 2, second, Any true reparations plan must erase the nation's staggering black-white wealth gap. Black American descendants of slavery are about 12% of the nation's population, but possess less than 2% of the nation's wealth. The wealth gap is simply the best cumulative economic indicator of the damages caused by American racism across generations. All right. So number one, you need to show that you're eligible, by proclaiming your lineage, right? Second, you need to if it's going to be reparations, it needs to close the wealth gap between us, descendants of slavery, and white folks, right? And then third, it says payments must be made directly, as in previous cases, such as German payments to Holocaust victims and U.S. payments to citizens and non-citizens of Japanese descent for the internment during World War II. Recipients must have discretion over funds received as restitution. In other words, no, don't make no hoops that I gotta jump through for like eligibility and accessing the money. Well, what about a housing voucher? What about education? No, if I want to allocate those funds in that way, then I'll do it. I might already have a house. I don't need no other house. I might already pay my student loans off. Don't tell me it needs to be education. Okay, so finally and critically, the bill will have to be paid by the federal government. Bringing the black share of American wealth in line with the black share of the population will ultimately require an expenditure of $14 trillion. Collectively, the sum of the annual budgets of all state and local governments is $3.1 trillion. Individually, local municipalities such as Evanston generally do not have the resources to pay black reparations in a meaningful way. But a sufficiently committed federal government, one that found more than $5 trillion in a single year to answer the COVID-19 emergency, can achieve it. Yeah. So y'all, I hope y'all have all those 4 bullet points. That's like the bare minimum of what needs to be involved with a reparations program.
A single year. Think about that. All of this time, people have been telling us how the United States could not afford X, Y, and Z. They just can't afford it. They don't have it. If they do it, it's going to break the bank. It's just going to tear this whole country apart. Within a year's time, these people have came up with at least $5 trillion. So you're about, according to Darity's numbers, his base number of 14 trillion, you're almost halfway there within a year.
And the thing about that, Ali, is it's not that you're giving it away in 1 year, right? It's a part of a 10-year program. So even at the baseline number, it's not like you're just saying $14 trillion and it's going to everybody in 1 year. It's going to be spread out over years. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you, bro.
No, you're on point with that. That's the point that needs to be made. That's the point that needs to be made. And our positions are always so modest about everything. We're so nice about everything. Like, we're making room for them. Like, hey, spread this out over 10 years and all of this kind of stuff. These people are showing you they don't even need no goddamn 10 years to do this. We can do this within 2 years' time. Within a year's time, if we really wanted to, we can do it in a year. They're showing you.
We can.
Yeah. Yeah. And we up there being nice, like, we can spread it out over 10 years. Like, boom, man, these people don't need that much time to do this. They're showing you.
You're right about that, man. You are right about that. I mean, if you did $5 trillion a year, the baseline is met because Darity just pushed the baseline up and I know I seen a recent tweet. Dr. Darity pushed the baseline up he did a recalculation from 12 trillion to 14 trillion. Well, they just came up with $5 trillion out of thin air.
Within a year's time.
Within a year's time. You break up just the baseline reparations number. And in 3 years, at 5 trillion a year, then the baseline is covered.
Right.
So
Exactly. We should put the we should put the baseline of 15 trillion based on the 5 trillion you guys came up with within a year's time. We're going to do this within 3 years, 5 trillion a year, and we're going to get this thing over and done with very quickly. We don't have to drag this thing out for no damn 10 years. For what? That's just me talking. That's just me talking. I'm just saying, based on what we see going on today, right now, as this so-called pandemic relief. So I'm just trying to say, listen, they're proving to you they don't need that amount of time. We're just a nice people. We're nice, and we're trying to figure out nice ways of saying everything and presenting everything and all of that. And I get it.
Another thing is we don't have the power, like, you know, so we trying to do something that we feel has a chance of flying, you know. But we can do that, but at the same time, we also need to figure out a strategy that we can implement to get the power that's necessary to make whatever bill that we want to make move, just like how they made it move, just like that with the pandemic.
Yep.
And as this article from the New York Times shows, how the government pulls coronavirus relief money out of thin air, the blueprint has been laid out.
Bro.
It's every element of reparations. If read family, let me stop sharing this. If you want, let me hold on. Let me just, pardon me, brothers. Pardon me for a second. If you want to understand reparations from A to Z, if you want to know what these people did to us, get this book. Fam, let me read something real quick. Let me read something just real quick. All right. This is from the book. I'm reading from the online, from the Kindle version, because I got all of this stuff highlighted. So again, the pages in the online ebook version, Audible book, is different from the actual page numbers. I know that from my end, at least, that's the way it is. But on the Audible book, this is page 279. And it reads, it says, for example, right? This is how they justified taking our land, where we built up our own, created our own middle class. But we did the stuff that people are saying, do. Pull yourself up by your own bootstrap. We're the masters of that, right? He says, for example, they say, for example, in 1953, Memphis, the middle income Black Lauderdale Vance Avenue community was declared a slum just to justify demolition, including the symbolic, significant burning of the former home of a prominent Black community leader, Robert Church, at 384 South Lauderdale Street. Right? So this is what these people were doing. This was a middle income. It's a middle class neighborhood, right? It says the community's residents had protested the decision to no avail. Residents beseeched Senator McKellar, their one-time neighbor and the conduit of federal authority, not to wreck this whole section of the city, as one letter put it. Quote, the homeowners are sick and distressed beyond measure. Imagine you're a middle income community, you're doing good, you're living well. You, a Black person in America, you finally got a piece of the pie. And this is in the 50s. This is in the 50s, 1953. So you notice that these people had to have been feeling good, knowing the atrocities that we were still going through in the 50s. It continues. They wrote that they had toiled for years to pay off their mortgages and fix up their properties. And they succeeded in making this the best neighborhood for Blacks in Memphis. Their community was more valuable than any relocation funds the city might provide. This was something that they built up. want to move. Because they wouldn't have asked no white people to move, or they wouldn't have tried to use trickery to get them out of their communities, right? And if they were going to give them relocation funds, I'm pretty certain that it would have been way more substantial than they would have been given to quote unquote Negroes in the 1950s. It continues. One of E.H. Boss's, Crump's leading black organizers, the Reverend T.O. Fuller, protested that he'd lose his home, workplace, and church. Their grievances were ignored. The Memphis Housing Authority, established in the mid-1930s, part of the wave of local authorities, began under Roosevelt's New Deal, leveled a 46-acre area and replaced the single-family homes with the low-rise 900-unit public housing project. They took something that was a thriving black community and basically made a ghetto out of it. Basically made a ghetto out of it. People, if you don't understand the history of how we get here, right, then you're just going to keep formulating opinions that are baseless, that are not going to move the needle. And what you become is an enemy to your own upward mobility in this nation. Because I know people that are enjoying these stimulus checks and extra income from unemployment, still talking bad about reparations. You're enjoying the very thing we're trying to not only make perpetual, but trying to get every single month for the next 10 years. We're owed that. At the minimum, we're owed that. That 14 trillion is just a baseline number, which means a low bottom line starting point just to get the ball rolling. You see, we can parlay the rest of what's owed into, now we can start talking programs. Now we can start talking about free daycare for our children instead of paying that. Like, I know people that pay $800-900 a month for daycare, free health care, free college. This is what they owe us. The slaves built the majority of the best colleges in the United States of America, and their children, when they were free, couldn't even go to the colleges.
Right. Right.
This is why. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
No, finish your point.
No, I was going to round it up. This is why reparations has to be done. I don't even theoreticize when it comes to reparations. This is why it has to be done, and it will be done. Period.
And you know, I had a conversation with one of my cousins today, and he was asking, because he sent me the YouTube link of that young guy that was debating with Roland Martin and talking about the school that he allegedly bought or started or whatever, and how he's doing for self and yada, 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 right? So he sent me that, and he was telling me how brilliant he thought it was that this kid was doing this and all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, listen, man, you know, the bottom line is, oh, let me tell you what else he said. He said he thought it was brilliant, and he said that he said something to the effect of, at least he's not sitting around with a pity party, so to speak. He used the term pity party. So I know, when I see stuff like that, what that is, right? It's a shot at Black Americans who are advocates for reparations based on the victimization of Black people for multiple generations, right? So so he's using this kind of language about pity party and do for self, and I'm like, and how brilliant this is that this kid allegedly started this school. And I said, well, you think he started a school and you think it's brilliant based on what? What makes you think that it's brilliant what he's doing? What is it based on? Like what I'm trying to understand. Like usually when you give somebody props for something, it's because of some result that they've produced, right? So my thing is, what is his background in education? He's only what 19, 20, 21. So he's now trying to take on the job of an educator. He's trying to take on the position of a business manager. Like he's somehow experienced in the business management of an educational facility.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, how has some 19-year-old convinced you that what he's doing is brilliant when he hasn't even proven to you that he's credentialed or qualified to even take on the task? Why is it brilliant? What is this? What is the student turnout rate? Like he's just starting this thing, allegedly. He's just starting it. So how is it brilliant? How do you know he's not going to produce a bunch of knuckleheads?
Hey, look at this
How do you,
comment real quick, Ali.
uh-huh.
Right, segue. Right on cue. I am a teacher. The brother Cato Amir. Shout out, brother. He's a frequent here at BTP Media, Be the Power Media Group.
Yes.
He says, I am a teacher. I have
Shout
won
out Cato.
awards for the performance of my students in a largely failing region. And guess what? Many of my students fall into crime, have been killed, and live in poverty. He says the solution has to be systemic. It must be reparations.
Right.
Right on cue with what you're talking about when you say, who's to say that these students are still not basically going to wind up doing the same exact thing? People
Right.
just don't get it.
They don't get it because they think that our problem has been one of education. And I disagree with that. I don't think that the problem is one of education. I think our problem is one of being racially targeted by people who are more interested in our oppression than they are in our upward mobility. That's what I think the true problem is. And I think people don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge it because it's a hard thing. Like, think about it. It's a very hard thing to acknowledge that you're in a position of weakness almost all the time, right? You're always in a position of, you know, you're not in an inferior position. You're in an inferior position almost all the time in this country, and nobody really wants to admit that. They don't really want to admit it. They want to feel like I have control over this at somewhere, some kind of way. I have some control over this. It can't all be because of I'm a target of some kind of racial oppression. And some of this has to be my own control. And on a certain level, yeah, it's like, yeah, you have opportunities to get certain types of employment, to even start certain types of businesses. But when you look at, and it's something I was trying to explain to him, when you look at Black businesses, a whole bunch of them fail, right? A whole bunch of new Black businesses fail because of lack of capital, lack of access to that, to capital to start the thing, the capital to keep the business going, right? This is even before COVID that was the case.
That's
And
right.
so now, obviously, there's still that problem plus the pandemic. So, my thing to him was, I understand this whole do for self thing is not new. It's an Elijah Muhammad talking point. We know it very well. I said, but here's what's interesting. You got members of the Nation of Islam who work for white folks. Members of the Nation of Islam
That's right.
who go to public school, even though they might have Muhammad University, Clara Muhammad schools, or whatever the case is. They've had Shabazz restaurants, all kind of stuff, but they still wind up working for white folks, going to public schools, accepting money from the federal government. So
That's right.
all of that do for self talk is cute and everything, and it sounds good, and it plays to the emotions of Black people who believe that some kind of way we can just snatch control of this thing. But the fact of the matter is that's not true. It's not true. It's never been true. It's never
That's
been
right.
true. And so all of these things that are really shots at reparations, and we can't. I feel like the young kid who was debating where Roland Martin was actually shooting at reparations in his own way
Yeah,
by
he
talking the
was.
way that he was talking.
He was.
Yeah, I, so when I hear somebody bring him up and like talk about how brilliant it is, I'm like, yeah, I don't know nothing about that because all I know is what that kid was on there saying. And a man can say anything. Anybody can say anything.
That's right.
Anybody can say anything, but prove it. That's the thing. Prove it. Prove that what you're doing is something successful because I've seen um, Nation of Islam restaurants come and go. I know that there's Clara Muhammad. There's a Clara Muhammad school right on 116th Street off of Lenox Avenue. I don't see where that thing is producing any. Listen, I'm not trying to shoot at them, but I'm just saying. I gave the example of Deion Sanders. I said, look at Deion Sanders' school, right? Deion Sanders is a multi-millionaire. Started a charter school. It closed due to insolvency. So our problem is access, having the proper access to capital. Even millionaires are admitting that. I'm like, how is it that Ice Cube can see this? How is it that Nile Rodgers can see this? I've spoken to Nile Rodgers personally. This man is net worth $100 million. I've spoken to him personally about reparations, and he's like, "Yo, you're 100% right." He calls me Rock, right? Because that's my production name. You're 100% right, Rock. You're 100% right. I think reparations will solve a whole shitload of problems for our people in this country. This
That's
man
right.
is net worth $100 million, and he's telling me this.
And it's a fact. And that's what I'm saying, right? When you have someone that has a net worth of $100 million, when you have billionaires like Robert Smith and Bob Johnson,
that's right,
et cetera, millionaire, even Pharrell, when he was on Finding Our Roots, hosted by Dr. What's his name? Henry Louis Gates. Did I say that right?
Henry Louis Gates. Yep.
Right? Yeah, Henry Louis Gates.
He got so tight. He got so tight at the revelations of what his family went through in slavery, and I think even shortly after slavery, that he was like, we need reparations. Another multi-millionaire. Who knows how many hundreds of millions this dude, Pharrell, is worth. That was one of the first things he said. He thought about remedy.
Reparations and advocacy. Those are the two words that he used, and I remember that clear as day.
That's right. Yep. So I see you got something pulled up, Josh. I'm gonna pull it up in 1 second. We had Judge Joe Brown on. Shout out to Judge Joe Brown, man. We're gonna reach out to the OG. We're gonna look to work with him on some mentoring programs, etc. But when we're, one of the things when we were building on reparations, he was basically saying that it was a pipe dream, that it was something that came up at least 3 times in his life. I'm guessing this time being the 3rd, but never, ever has at least from our vantage point, has reparations had, I don't want to say never ever. Let me not say that, at least because when we read those Freedmen bills in Congress, this ain't just no pundits on a TV talk show talking, right? Or no talking heads, or no Washington Times and Washington Post, New York Times, Atlantic articles, etc. These were congressional figures, House reps and senators proposing our reparations bill. And again, we're going to get into those bills soon. But we've not had this level of talk of reparations in forever. Since then. And every other time that it came up, whether you talk about what Queen Mother Moore was trying to do with the New Africa movement, and even John Conyers with the HR 40 introduction of the HR 40 bill, when you break down their ideology, it wasn't rooted in anything that was practical or even doable. It was something that the average scholar, right, particularly if you were a political scientist, could look at and laugh off behind the scenes and just say, man, that's garbage. It's garbage. But now you have some intellectuals behind this thing. You have some what they call, you used to call it back in the days, eggheads behind this thing. You got economists now behind this thing. You got people with voices now getting behind this reparations push. They see what it is. Pharrell had to be thinking in that moment, I came up because of entertainment. What happens if I didn't have entertainment? Am I just a victim of struggle? Am I just a victim of struggle? So, Josh, I'm gonna pull your screen up, bro, and just go in and share what you're breaking down real quick.
No doubt. I wanted to touch on one thing real quick, because Ali, you went in on the mentality of people who think that, you know, doing for self is you know, a viable alternative. Like we don't need to do that. They often say things like we're begging, we're asking, begging white folks for stuff, and you know, not understanding that the whole we having a pity party. Not understanding that the history of America is all about white Americans getting undergirded by large government spending, you know, as far as public programs like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. We want to talk about the minimum wage. You know, you want to talk about the GI Bill. We want to talk about all these type of things. The Homestead Acts. Okay, these are all things. This is all welfare and handouts and stuff that white folks got access to. But guess who did not get access to those? We did not get access to those programs. And that was for many, many generations. I was listening to a program, Dr. Darity was talking, and actually if y'all want to go check out his podcast, is actually on SoundCloud. I can't remember the name of it. Somebody that's in the chat, if y'all know the name of it, drop it. But I was hearing somebody talk about, it was a white person that their family, they found out that their family had got like the Homestead Act, and then, you know, generations later, on some land that they had received via the Homestead Act, somebody found like the largest deposit of natural gas on that land in like 1980. And the first year when they found it, they got $100,000. You know, now think about that compared to we didn't get they reneged and didn't give us the 40 acres. When they got 160 all the way up to 640 acres per land on later Homestead Acts, you know, and think about all the oil and gas we didn't find, we didn't get access to, you know. I mean, that's just one example of many, right? So when we want to think about, well, now did that person lift themselves by their own bootstraps, or did they get boots and straps and were they lifted up?
That's right.
See, that's one of the things we got to think about. And, you know, I will say, though, that when you are doing business, there is a certain mentality that you have to have. Like, if it's going to be, it's up to me. You know, the thing about being in business is you're actually taking your time, you're taking your energy, you're taking your reputation, you're taking your whatever money you have, or you getting in debt, and you putting that at risk in the marketplace. And you can lose that, and you can lose all of those things, right? So it's a certain mentality that you have to have when you're doing business. And I understand why people say, well, we don't need to be begging, or we just need to get it done. But just understand that there's place for doing politics, especially doing group politics. There's space for fighting for what you're owed, and there's a space for playing the game of government. Like Brother Logic always says, it's the game of who gets what, who gets what,
That's right,
how much for how long, and all of that, right? So there's a space for both of them, because guess what? You look at other groups, especially white folks. Guess what? They playing the game of government, and they getting access. They're the ones that's getting all the contracts and all the special, they're positioned to compete for the contracts better than us. All these type of things. So yeah, I understand why that mentality is required. The mentality I will do for self, and we need to, if it's gonna be, it's up to me mentality. That's required in business. But you got to understand when you're talking about politics, it's a different mentality that's required. Now, if you can just bring that back up, I'm gonna get into what I'm gonna say now. The reason why I brought this up is because when we listened to what I just read from the eligibility, I think it was number one, the first bullet point that they already brought up in that article. He was talking about eligibility, and he was talking about pretty much what is your heritage, what is your family line that you come from, your lineage, right? And we are descendants of freedmen. Now we know that years ago there was a Freedmen's Bureau, where it was a bureau that handled just specifically our affairs, because the government knew exactly who it committed those atrocities against. The government knew exactly that the damages that was done to through the enslavement period, right? They knew it was us, our unique tribe that was created here as a result of that institution. So they knew that they needed a specific agency to handle the affairs that and do the work of repairing and tending to the needs of our group. So that particular agency or bureau, was created underneath, what was it, the Department of War? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now, if like when people say, well, what do we need for reparations? I saw somebody say in the chat, man, no student loans, tag. No student loan forgiveness, tag. I wanted that, or we need. Somebody else in the chat said we need.
She was being funny. She was being funny.
Oh yeah, no, but I'm saying, like, yeah, like even if that's a legitimate gripe. But what I'm saying is, a lot of those things, a lot of those ideas can be implemented. They need to be part of a program. And if we're gonna have a program, to me, you're gonna need a special look at this right here. Like if you look and see what kind of programs that are a part of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, look at all these programs. You got energy and minerals, federal acknowledgement, Indian gaming, natural resources, social services, safety and risk management, wildland fire, workforce planning and coordination, economic development, irrigation. These are all like key areas. Now you can now we don't have the same issues, obviously, because we're not the same group, and we're kind of more integrated with everybody else in America. But if you want to look at this and just replace some of these, like for example, let's look at this, like social services. Yeah. So therapy coming from post-traumatic slave syndrome or whatever, and therapy growing up in terrible environments that a lot of us grew up in. Like Naheem, you always talk about the crack era in the 80s. But we want to talk about
Why is there a Bureau of Indian Affairs and there's no Freedmen's Bureau?
That's what I'm talking about. Bro.
And we're gonna dedicate a whole program to that. We're gonna dedicate, because we're going to get, and we are going to have established a Bureau of Freedmen Affairs. It's as simple as that. We don't have that. It was taken from us. It was stripped. And everybody else came in and used our struggle. And everybody else is eating good while our people are killing themselves up in the streets of Chicago and New York, Detroit, Philly, everywhere. All over the country, crime in black neighborhoods, low-income black neighborhoods, the hood, the ghetto is up. And New York is up 100%. 100%. We don't have a Bureau of Freedmen Affairs. You know what we have, family? We have a Congressional Black Caucus who are like a literal puppet being handled by literal puppeteers on strings, right? That's what we have, who voted in 1988, if I am not mistaken, every member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I think it was every member, voted for the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which paid reparations to Japanese Americans. When John Conyers introduced the bill the next year, this same group, I believe it was the next year, 89, am I correct?
Yeah, the very next year.
The very next year, the same group, the Congressional Black Caucus, were told, don't push for black reparations. It's gonna turn white people off. Wait a minute, we broke. We just gave Japanese Americans money. Now Japanese Americans in certain cities are worth $400,000. I don't know if that's even the nationwide total. That might be the nationwide total. 400,000. Nowhere.
I know that was LA.
That was LA. Nowhere in America are we worth that.
No.
Nowhere.
No.
You see what I'm
look
saying?
at DC.
They got reparations and was able to build themselves here in the United States of America. Yeah, my bad. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just saying, we run down the numbers in net worth, median net worth in LA 4,000. I believe in DC it's 3,500. In Boston it's $8. You know what I'm saying? Liquid assets in Miami, I think it's $11. Liquid assets in LA $200. And even like I even saw one like Tulsa, Oklahoma. We still like way at the bottom in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then the interesting thing about that is you compare it to Cherokee and some and other tribes, and they're way over us. Like they might be. I forgot what the numbers is like we still in the 4 digits and they in the 5 digits or 6 digits or something. Like it's so like we at the bottom everywhere. So that's the thing. Understand reparations and its importance. We at the bottom everywhere. We at the bottom.
That's right.
And we didn't been in the country how long? And we didn't built what? See, I heard China, the dude China Mac. Y'all know what I'm talking about. He been on Instagram, and he came when it was popping off about the Stop Asian Hate and stuff last week or a couple weeks ago. He was like, y'all don't. He had that one bar talking about y'all know who built them railroads and all that. Y'all don't understand. Look, I think I need to go in on that railroads, right?
Pull that up. I know Ali was wanting to say something real quick.
Go ahead, Ali. You come back to me. Yeah.
Oh no, you know what? I thought about something else that my cousin said that was funny. I'm trying to remember because you just caught me off guard again. But it wasn't just the do for self thing that he said that was weird. It was something else that he said. But y'all go ahead. I
seen you unmuting off and on, so I thought you was trying to jump in.
I got it pulled up because.
All right, Go ahead, Josh. Read that because that's a modern misconception, right? That the Chinese people are the ones that built the railroad system. Right? They run with this revisionist history. They don't speak about the fact that black slave labor built the railroad system, and there was some Chinese people who worked on those railroads.
Right, and it was more regional.
Yeah, go ahead, bro. Go in.
And it was more regional too. Like if you think about it, where were we located for the most part? We were across the country, and we were in all the major areas where railroad building was taking place. So let me just read this. It says, enslaved blacks played a critical role in building the American railway system, whether they were direct human property of the railroad companies or rented from their owners. Theodore Cornweibel Jr. reports. Now, this is coming from Here to Equality, by the way. Shout out to Dr. Darity. I hope you don't mind if we come from another excerpt from this book, but we gotta correct some of these narratives out here because they're gonna mess around.
Hey, Kirsten Mullen.
Yes, definitely. Because if we listen to them, they'll be They'll be having you think that they done built railroads all the way up and down the East Coast, the Midwest, the South,
That's
and
right.
all the way to the West Coast. In 1859, 1/3 of all Southern lines employed 100 or more slaves, ranging from 1,200 at work building the Atlantic and Gulf Railroad in Georgia to 500 building the Vicksburg, Shreveport, and Texas Railroad to 400 or more toiling on 7 other lines. In contrast, by 1859, no single plantation was home to as many as 1,200 slaves, and 400 bondsmen were to be found. Hold on, let me read that again. In contrast, by 1859, no single plantation was home to as many as 1,200 slaves, and 400 bondsmen were to be found on only a very few large estates. So understand that if you had 400, if you had 400 slaves on any large estate, there was only very few, and no single plantation had 1,200. Now let's contrast that to the railroads, right? It says it says 1/3 of all Southern lines employed 100 or more slaves, ranging from 1,200 to 400 more, or 1,200 on one Atlantic and Gulf Railroad in Georgia, and then down to like 400 or more on 7 other lines. So the railroad, our slave labor contribution on the railroads was even more than on any plantations. So understand that. So it's perhaps the single largest concentration of enslaved railroaders was the 1,493 men and 425 boys at work constructing the North Carolina Railroad in 1852. So that's what almost, that's like 1,900 and something enslaved folks building a railroad, including little boys, right? It says whether for construction and maintenance or sometimes operations, Southern railroads could not do without enslaved black labor. Sometimes owners actually were reluctant to hire out their enslaved laborers because of the extreme danger associated with rail construction and train operations. If they did so, they often would take out insurance policies on their property, or would on their property, peep that, right?
On their
Or they
property.
would, yeah, or they would structure contracts that precluded their property from working on the riskiest tasks. Of course, those contractual provisions were not always obeyed, leading contractors and slave owners to the courtroom. See what the, listen how sick this stuff is, man. So basically, they're saying like the railways, they might have needed more labor to do the job, right? So they just contracted out some, they procured the slave labor from some other slave owners to do the job. Come on from the plantation, y'all not, we'll pay you more than what the plantation is going to be, labor is going to be worth.
Mhm.
And they would lease them out, and it said like the slave owners, because that was their equity, right? We were their equity.
That's
We
right.
were their wealth. They didn't want us to be doing these risky jobs, and if they did, then the insurance policies had to be taken out on. Yeah, that's crazy, right? So let me just continue. Racial stratification operated in the rail system with enslaved blacks and subsequently emancipated blacks, assigned the most dangerous work.
Pay attention to this, y'all.
Prior to the widespread adoption of air brakes and automatic couplers early in the 20th century, one of the riskiest assignments was the role of brakeman. Many railroads used slaves for this hazardous position, the lowest ranking on the train. Their main tasks were helping to stop the train and coupling and uncoupling cars. Brakemen lost their lives by falling off of the tops of moving, swaying freight cars, especially at night or in inclement weather, while manually applying brakes on each car. Even on passenger trains, they had to jump back and forth from car to car to apply brakes. Coupling with link and pins required the brakeman to attach an oval iron link with an iron pin in a pocket at one end of at one end of one car, stand between it and the other car, and be ready to drop a pin as the new link entered the new car's pocket and avoid being crushed as the two cars came together. Under improved safety conditions brought about by innovations in braking equipment, white laborers seized the brakeman position. So after it's no longer life endangering every time you needed to do the job, then they're gonna get us up out of there and they're gonna get some paid laborers to do the job. You know, it says driving black workers out of the jobs. The history of railroad work is illustrative of a general American tendency to disregard the value of black life. Slaveholders who hesitated to hire out their human chattel to the railroads appear to be an exception, but not because they place an intrinsic worth on black people, but rather it was because they merely were seeking to protect their investment to assure a longer term return. Whether pay was made to slave owners directly or directly to black laborers after slavery as wages, the following comment from Cornweevil is opposite. The opposite with an A. Okay.
Apropos.
Okay. It is. I'm not familiar with that word, but I'm gonna get it right.
It's all good.
It is part of a It is part of the perverse genius of capitalism that a dangerous job does not usually warrant a higher wage. Among the operating crews, brakemen were paid the least. So, hey, look, who built them railroads?
We built them railroads.
Mhm.
And not only did we build them railroads, I hope y'all paid attention to what Josh was just reading. Get this book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century by Dr. Sandy Darity and A. Kirsten Mullins. If you want to understand reparations and not go off of what you think reparations should be, get the book, read it. So
That's right.
they got paid the least. If they got paid, if it wasn't slave laborers, if it was just freemen, right? For the most dangerous job, one that was likely to end your life, they had to jump from one car to another, on the top of one car to the next, to couple a train, to pull it together by dropping pins. They were getting crushed to death.
Hey, you know, if the slave owner is saying, "Nah, I don't want him doing
That's
that
right.
work,"
I don't want.
know.
That's my property. I don't even want the. I don't care about his human existence, but I believe that I own him, and I don't want him to die doing this work. Come on, family.
And I'm getting paid. You know what I'm saying?
That's
it's like
right.
The money that you're paying me is not even worth it.
We are being fed so many BS narratives that work against us. We've never had like this channel. And even though this is our newer channel, our other channel was popping. We building this one up. Our other channel will be back up on the 14th of April. But we should have thousands of people listening. This is not pretty. This ain't cute. This ain't showbiz. Like, this is Freedman University right here. This is the education that we need to help us come up out of just the mental condition that we're in, because it forces us to understand where the seats of power are at in the United States of America. And those seats of power reside in one place, and that's in this government, point blank, period. So I want to bring y'all to this real quick. Let's go to the first place. The road to zero wealth. How the racial wealth divide is hollowing out America's middle class. Read that, family. The road to zero wealth. This is not a report about a road to exponential wealth or greater wealth or more wealth than what we have now. It is a report that says the road to zero wealth. And if you can see the image, It is the top of two mountaintops, if you will, that have a gap in between it. Because you can't get across from one
Remind
side
me of
to
that.
the other.
That
Huh?
remind me of that Wile E. Coyote and Road Runner.
That's exactly what
You
it
start
reminds
running,
us of, right?
and you just start running, your feet, your legs still going, and you just off the cliff. And next thing you know, you just drop.
And in this instance, the road runner represents white
Mm.
America, Asian Americans, Nigerian Americans, all of these different Americans, but we represent the coyote that
Mm,
doesn't
mm, mm.
realize that the anvil has just been
Come
tied
on,
to his foot right as he
yeah,
goes to make the leap to the other
you
side.
come on, bro. You spitting right now.
I
Come on.
mean, so let's get into this thing. Oh man, this reparations conversation is once you understand the raw numbers, and I want to let people know I've been on this reparations thing. I want to stress that again. Did I have the details that I'm sharing with you now? No. No, I didn't. But I've been on reparations. Argue with brothers in the Moorish Science Temple of America from at least 2011 about reparations. Arguing.
Nation of Islam too.
Hey, that's right. Nation of Islam as well. That's right. So this is, I hope everybody can see this, man. This is, let's read this. It says, wealth is the buffer families need when faced with unexpected economic shocks, like a lost job or a broken down car. My brakes just went out a couple weeks ago. Something about the hydraulic line had busted or something like that. $500, no, $422 I had to spend to get that fixed, right? $422. There was a time where that $422 would have destroyed me. Like, I'm keeping it official with y'all, family. I am keeping it official with y'all that would have just destroyed me. $422, and I couldn't drive the car because the brakes, they just wouldn't brake at all. I had to get those brakes fixed. It says wealth is also the capital available to families to take advantage of economic opportunities, like buying a home, i.e., outside of the housing projects and ghettos where most of us live at, saving for college, where we are one of the lowest represented groups. And those of us that do make it through college, those of us who are descendants of freedmen, let me say, of the formerly enslaved, whose lineage is as Americans or are as Americans, don't even get good jobs after we graduate from college, go into debt that we almost can never pay back. It says, or investing in the stock market, something that we just don't do because we don't have the capital to do it. It says ultimately, wealth can be the difference between a family maintaining and strengthening their economic status or flailing in economic insecurity. Go back to what I was reading about the experiment with Stockton, California, where just $500 a month extra made so much of a difference in many people's lives. So let's look at this chart. Let's look at this chart. This is sobering, sad, and every other superlative that we could associate with those two words. So it says with durable goods. So that's your car, furniture, maybe a painting that's worth something that's durable, something that can last a long time and still possess some type of value even after you purchase it, right? Even it might depreciate, but it still has value, right? You can still sell your car and get some money for it if you have a car to sell. But look at what it says without durable goods. The median, which means middle household wealth, is $1,700.
$1,700.
$1,700. $1,700, fam. What did I say? 1.7. That's
Yeah,
because
when you said it.
I'm
Yo, you
trying
said I
to
thought just 1.7 million? Nah,
I'm trying to pull up
1.7 thousand.
I'm trying to pull up this article at the same time while I was typing, and I realized that I said something wrong.
You weren't wrong. You weren't wrong.
Oh, I wasn't. It sounded like I said something wrong. Though.
Nah. It's just we used to saying 1 point something. You
Well,
think you're
yeah,
talking
okay,
about
all right.
million. You know what I'm saying?
So yeah, right. $1,700. But look at Latinos. Some people will say, but look at Latinos. You know, they're not too much better off. I want you all to realize that most of this Latino population started coming in the 60s, with the larger a majority of them starting their influx in the 80s and then the 90s. And they've already caught up and surpassed us. We've been citizens since 1776.
Facts.
Look at white people at the bottom. $134,000 worth, and without durable goods, they're still worth $116,000. We $116,000 to our $1,700, family. You know, somebody may see two men arguing. They'd be like, we're not going to have a penis measuring contest. Well, if we're going to use this chart as a penis measuring contest, the black man ain't holding up in this particular regard.
We ain't even got a nub or Vienna sausage in this joint.
We ain't even Vienna sausage. Excuse the graphic references, family, but damn. Well, we gotta say pause.
We got ours chopped off. That's what it looks like.
We gotta say pause, no homo,
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah.
Okay. Just so long as y'all get the point. Just so long as y'all get the point. I mean, come on. This is us. There's just no recovery. Chart after chart shows the same thing. The same exact thing. Chart after chart. Look at where we're at. Where this red line. This is white wealth up here at the top, this blue line. The red wealth is at the bottom. 2013, it shows $1,700. At least in 1983, we hit $6,800. In 2001, we were at $14,000. 2007, 10,400. Then we get President who?
Trump.
Barack Obama.
2007. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Barack Obama destroys black wealth when he comes in. He saves the banks, which ultimately saves white people. And what winds up happening? He told us rising tides lifts all boats. Well,
I don't see no rising on this chart.
There ain't no rising on this chart for us. So what served as a flotation device for white America and other Americans served as an anchor tied around our foot and dragged us to the bottom, to the point that we're still dragging. This is what the economists are showing us, family, that without reparations, let's stop this. Let me share this real quick so that we can show people exactly what we're told. We're not pulling this stuff out of our behinds, family. Median wealth of black Americans will fall to zero by 2053, warns new report. If that is at $1,700 now, the middle black family, median black family, it's saying by 2053, that graph that we showed that's going down is going to be at zero. That's our grown children and their children, our grandchildren. We're talking about an America we can't even afford to live in anymore. Only reparations stops that. We showed the article earlier of the crime as a result of poverty. The crime is the result of poverty, period.
That's right.
It is not the only factor of crime. There's all types of crime, but when we're talking about the crime that we know, it is due to poverty. We pulled up an article. We pulled up several articles over the year that we've been building on BTP, showing the correlation between poverty and crime. You get, what did the chief of police of Philadelphia say? If we could just reduce poverty in Philly by just 5%, we could reduce some of the homicide. They already got some of the highest poverty rates in the country. Matter of fact, I think it said it was #1 in 2018. He said if we could just reduce that by 5%, 5%, we'll stop some of the homicides. What happens if you reduce poverty to 0 by paying the descendants of freedmen in America the debt that you owe us? What would happen to the crime rates then?
And you have to ask yourself, is that reducing the crime rate a priority? And especially if it's not like a lot of people think reparations will have to be, because we're talking about understanding reparations. Reparations is not something that's going to be paid via taxation, and it's not something that's going to be fundraised from somebody's savings account or taking something from somebody else, taking something from white folks. Like that's what a lot of them think. Well, I'm gonna have to forfeit my land. I'm gonna have to forfeit my stock positions. I'm gonna have to forfeit my savings. I'm gonna have to pay extra reparations tax. That's not how none of this stuff works, man. That's not how none of this stuff works. And again, we say this on like every other program, but we got to keep saying it because apparently people it's not synthesized. It's not penetrated enough. They didn't have to come at you with no extra taxes for that COVID. We're gonna start. Right. We're gonna start from now. We're gonna work backwards. They didn't have to come at no extra taxes or do no fundraising from the $29 trillion bank bailout of 2008. Now keep in mind those two events of those trillions and trillions and trillions happened under Trump and happened under George Bush. And those are both administrations who did significant tax cuts in the early years of their administrations. So if we were going to see some type of inflation, it would have happened. We would have seen hyperinflation when the government wants to do those trillions of immediate expenditures of creation of new funds and new money and putting it out there, right? We would have seen hyperinflation if it was going to happen then. And so, okay, the COVID, the bank bailout. What about the 9/11 fund when the government had to pay victims for 9/11? That was like $7.3 billion, right? Did they have to? Did your taxes go up anymore under a 9/11 fund? Did you have to come out of your account for that? Did you have to come out of your account for the Japanese Civil Liberties Act reparations? Did you have to come out of your account? Did you see your taxes go up for when they paid Guam or when they paid the Jewish Holocaust descendants, or giving something to Native Americans? Like you didn't see, there was no tax on your cigarettes or tax on your bubble gum or whatever the case may be, or your cornflakes to raise money. It was no tax on your alcohol to raise money to pay for those programs. There was no liquidation of no equity and no financial assets to pay for that program. So let's stop with all that, right? How that's going to be paid is the same way all these other programs are paid out. The United States Treasury and its fiscal agent, the Federal Reserve, just issues understand this. There's no taxation that pays for any program on the federal level. All spending is new spending from the Federal Reserve. All government spending is new spending from the Federal Reserve. The only thing that taxation does is the main thing that it does is it takes money out of the circulation. So if you think about it like a sink, the water that's coming out of the faucet is the new spending. It's the government spending, and taxation is like when you just open the drain to let some of the water out so that the sink doesn't overflow. That would be like inflation. So that's how this thing works. So when we talk about reparations, like you can structure. Obviously, what we're not talking about such a huge amount of money, a huge amount of new um, currency that will be put into America's economy that would overflow the sink, right? It won't overflow the sink because we've seen the 29 trillion ain't overflow the sink. The 7, 8, 9 trillion or whatever they did in the past year, that didn't overflow the sink. So we're talking about structuring a reparations program over a course of time that's not going to overflow that sink, and that's not going to require you to drain a whole lot of money out of there via taxation.
Yes, indeed. So before we get up out of here, I want to pull up. I want to pull up something else, right? Insofar as reparation, I was in the car with my children today, and this Cardi B song was on because they be wanting to listen to the radio. I don't barely listen to the radio, and she said something about a broke N-word shouldn't get no puss. I guess we had Judge Joe Brown on, so I guess I could say the word puss. My man Judge Joe Brown was like, it's everywhere. I'll be still cracking up thinking about that. This is another excerpt that comes from Dr. Darity and A. Kirsten Mullins' book, From Here to Equality. And I bring this up because, like, when we think about the family unit, as opposed to looking at ourselves separately via the liberal feminist gender war that they're pushing, where they got the black woman fighting against the black man and always coming at the black man, i.e. Tamika Mallory, or should I say E.G. Tamika Mallory in her new Cadillac commercial, what Dr. Clark called them type showbiz liberators. And in her Cadillac commercial, she's talking about women, black women are going to be the ones that push this thing forward. She kept saying that during the election. I was on her threads online. Y'all know about my debate with my son. I'm about to chop some of that up because I got people hitting me up now saying, yo, bro, you was right about my son. You was right. I didn't see it then. And, you know, there were a lot of people that watched that debate and agreed with me. But
we be early about a whole lot of stuff, man.
Facts. We be early about a lot of stuff. So let me read this, right? Because this is important. I've read this on the platform before, but when we're disaggregating among black men and black women, then the reality of our wealth positionality becomes stark, right? Because poverty doesn't just result in crime. Several reports also note that it results in mental health issues as well. So, and there's a reason why I bring that up. I think about the neighborhood that I grew up in. Some of the sisters I've watched growing up, some of the sisters I've dealt with in my life. So I want to read this. It says, nor do differences in family structure provide headway in explaining black-white wealth inequality. Single white women with children have as high a median net worth as a black woman with no children. So if you got children, your personal wealth is dispersed among the children. But a single white woman with children has as high a median net worth as a black woman with no children. Single white parents have more than 2 times the wealth, $35,000 at the median of married black parents, which is $16,000. Again, you know, the other chart was talking about with durables and non-durables, right? But look at that, more than double. It's more than double. The professed economic benefits associated with having the quote unquote ideal family type do not translate into closure of the racial wealth gap. Meaning, just because I get married and you get married, sis, means we're going to somehow make it to the top of the world. That's basically a pipe dream when you consider the statistics and current trends. Now, some people obviously break out of that, but the exception to the rule is never the rule, which is why they have a term called outlier. You're an outlier. You're someone outside of the statistical norms. You are the anomaly. So obviously, we're not talking about you, nor can we use you as an example, because that would be anecdotal. Can't use one person and point to that one person out of 100 and then charge the other 99 with being a certain way if they all have aspirations. It's just not how it works. It continues, being a quote unquote stable, married, two-parent black family far from evens black and white wealth. He continues with that, right? He basically closes the door on that what I was just saying. Just because you get married, it doesn't mean that it's going to, you're going to put your dollars together, I'm going to put my dollars together. It continues. Furthermore, there are vast differences in wealth between black and white women. For example, older, over 60 years of age, single black women with a bachelor's degree have a median net worth of about $11,000. While single
do you have
white
that pull up? Do you have that one pulled up too?
Oh, it didn't come up? My bad, family. Let me pull that up. Let me pull that. So y'all can read. I'm glad you caught that. I want y'all to read along with me on this. Let me start over. It says, furthermore, there are vast differences in wealth between black and white women. For example, older, over 60 years of age, single black women with a bachelor's degree have a median net worth of about $11,000, while single white women with a college degree in the same age range have $384,000 in median net worth. Single black women with bachelor's degree worth about $11,000. Single white women with college degree in the same age range have $384,000 in median net worth. $11,000 to $384,000. It continues. Single mothers have negligible wealth, but the racial difference still is palpable. White single mothers have a median net worth of $3,000, but black single mothers have a median net worth of $0. I'm forced to think about growing up with a black single mother. Not because my father left or anything. He was a street cat. And, there's consequences to being in the streets. Michelle Alexander breaks this down in the new Jim Crow. Wasn't necessarily by choice that he wasn't there, but, the streets are the streets. They created these ghettos. The government did. And if you don't believe that, read the book, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, where he unequivocally breaks this down. He gives the ontology of the ghetto in the United States of America. Or read on The Atlantic, or listen to on SoundCloud, Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations, where he uses Chicago and the Lawndale area as an example. They did this to us. We could try to say, no, man, but that's just opinion at the end of the day. You can't take opinion and outweigh the facts and outweigh the statistics. how that saying goes, Josh, numbers don't lie, people do. Numbers don't lie. And
Yeah,
some people,
men lie, women lie, numbers don't.
that's right. And some people they're not intentionally lying. They just don't know any better. That's all. We've all been at that part and point where we don't know any better, but we should always be willing to study to show ourselves approved so that we are no longer espousing what we believe or what we think perhaps is true. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, man, because when we talk about the information that's out here, you always gotta question it. Even question. I always question everything, and I want to know the source. I want to know who is doing the study, and I want to know what their background is and what their biases are. Because you got to understand. I always try to get to the root. If you have a belief that you hold, and that's dealing with our people, you want to get down to the origin of that belief or that particular ideology and see if it was created and is it repeated by people that have your interests in mind. And, that like when we a lot of times we went in on people dealing with Moorish information and sovereign citizen ideology. And it's not just them. It's a lot, white supremacy has crept into a lot of these quote unquote woke black spaces. And but we pretty much, and what we're doing is challenging people to go and seek the origin of the ideology that they hold. Because when you go and seek that origin, a lot of times you'll find out that it didn't come from us and it didn't come from somebody who had our best interests in mind. It usually came from the opposite. It came from an enemy, and but it was positioned in a way where we saw some type of escape or some type of we were put in the trick bag. Essentially, it's a form of propaganda, and we weaponize it against ourselves. So yeah, always gotta go and seek the origin of the ideology you hold, especially if it don't vibe with, so let's just say this data right here that we're talking about. Where the study, because I heard some people used to tell me a couple of years ago, well, I don't trust them. I don't trust that numbers. That's the numbers from the Federal Reserve. That's the numbers from the system. But yeah, that's numbers just like that's the numbers that come from the government. The numbers are not necessarily biased. We want to talk about wealth levels and population and stuff like that. What it is when you do the studies, I want you to see these studies are done from people who have spent a lifetime studying racial inequality, studying economic effects of that, right? They've studied the historical context of our story in America. So I'm more inclined to trust and understand and accept the data statistics that we're talking about, because I know it's coming from people who put in the work over the years, and I don't really have to trust. I mean, you can go just and look up the methodology. You can look up all of that, and you can get to the answer. You can understand it for yourself. I do want to say though, this I hope everybody has finished up that book that Charles Blow, the devil we know, the devil you know.
The devil,
Yeah, the devil because it's talking about the story of the great migration, what we call it the Great Escape, when our people left out of the South, when it was 90% of our population is in the South, and now it's like 56% of the population. But we know, like we traded the devil we knew for the devil we didn't know. So the concept is like, we need to re-explore that devil that we know.
That's right.
And that being a mechanism or a way for us to finally get the power that we need. And it's not hard to understand why that message vibes with the name of this YouTube channel and the name of our organization, Be the Power, because that is how you can be the power. Like, don't fight. I ain't gonna steal your thunder, bro, because I know. Yeah, I ain't gonna steal your thunder. I can't do that motto like you. But if you understand that, if you've read that book, you can probably see a pathway to the power that we're talking about with the motto of this particular channel.
Definitely. So, Brother Ali, you had anything to say before we got up out of here?
Nah, man, I'm good, bro. I'm just glad to be on and listen to all of this information, man, and I'm happy to be that we're bringing this back up because it's important for the family to keep this at the forefront of our conversations. You know.
That's right. So, family, as Brother Josh just said, tomorrow night at 8:00 Eastern time, we really are gonna have a powerful discussion. It's going to be centered on, should our people who are fixtures in the North now move back down south? Like, we're going to get into we're going to have a real powerful conversation. We might take that conversation over 2 days. We might. It's so much. It's just so much to really dissect. Not that the book is a thick tome. It's not. So easily, I mean, you can read that book in a few days, man. If you're a reader, you can read that joint in about 2 days. Just to let you know, it's not a big book, but the discussion around it, particularly the Be the Power perspective, is a lot. We have so much to add. How we could write our own version of that book. Because this is something that we've discussed last year, but not in that sense that the reverse migration. We just, discussed the demographics of these areas and what would happen if everybody in those areas stepped up and became politically active. We didn't discuss it from what happens if, as Charles Blow tweeted out the other night, 700,000 people from the North moved to Mississippi. Mississippi changes forever. They lose their power because half the people, right? You got to always think there's going to always be liberal whites in those towns. And 9 times out of 10, they are against conservative neo-Confederates, aka Republicans. They're against them. This gives us a super majority, if you will, in those states. We get to challenge everything. To me, while the implementation of it seems impractical, the practicality of the idea is sound. Absolutely. And the brother gives his breakdown. I respect it. I think I could speak for the team when we say we respect it. We respect it. So we're going to have that conversation tomorrow. We are still collecting donations for the Juneteenth celebration, family. For those of you who would like to contribute, I will make this announcement. We have canceled the second portion of that celebration. It's just too much. Right? We have to be honest with ourselves. In the period of time that we wanted to get it done, it is almost impossible to do the things that we envisioned for that day. So what we are going to do is extend what we're doing on June 18th at the rally so that we can still meet and greet and build among each other and still have some, build some form of offline camaraderie with each other. So that rally on June 18th at the state capitol in Atlanta, Georgia is still going down, family. So I just put the link to our GoFundMe in the chat. So if you would like to support, check out our website, usadof.org. Get some of that Freedman merch. Get some of that Freedman merch. I've been shipping out some orders. I'm proud of that. Oh, this is us representing us for a change. The things that we're rooted in right here in good old United States of America that our ancestors built damn near for free. Even those that came up with certain inventions had those taken from them. Some of us received pennies that weren't worth a damn, and we still took it, made a way out of no way, founded little towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma, just so they could come behind us and destroy it. So, we're going to touch on those things and more at the reparations rally on June 18th. For those of you who are in the Atlanta or Georgia area, come through, pull up. If you can make it down here from the state that you're residing in right now, pull up. Let's build. Let's meet in person. Shake hands. Press flesh, as we used to say in the Moorish movement. So let's get up. I'm going to get up out of here. We've been on here for a little minute. I'll leave you all with the motto of the platform, which is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.